Hi everyone, this video is a sort of drawing process video for the first comic book style illustration I've done in a very long time. As you could see there, I first just draw a big sort of blob shape to capture the general size and position of the entire figure, and then I started breaking it up and working out specific details. Usually I would have blocked the legs in better before I started doing the anatomy, and especially fine details like the little veins and the nipples in this. This is the Incredible Hulk. But because I knew the legs were going to be cropped off and there was plenty of room, and I had very lightly captured the general position and size, I wasn't that worried about it. But usually I would make sure the entire position is looking good and all the proportions are correct before I start working on fine details. And as you can see, very typically the fine details in the face and the hair would be about the last thing I would worry about. I would make sure that the overall form is right, and that, kind of ironically in this case, since the Hulk in this form has such a tiny head, but you really want to make sure that the head is the right size and placed properly, attached to the body properly with a neck, which there's a lot more room to sort of cheat and to have a sort of unnatural look but pull it off with the Hulk. But always never waste time on detail in a face if it's connected to a head that's not properly connected to the body yet. Make sure everything is sort of working together first with no detail or very little detail, and then work on the big detail. So now I was happy with the overall penciling, so I moved on to inking. As you can see, I didn't do really tight pencils that had every hatch line in place. I just made sure the form and the general light source was there, and then I just moved right to inking. I was hoping to keep the entire drawing process down to roughly 1 hour, but like I said, I'm rusty, and I actually had the iPad right near my head, like just above my head, recording, which was put me in an awkward position, which is part of why I'm left-handed, so I always hold my pens and pencils in a bizarre manner, but it's made even worse by the fact that I was sort of forced to lean back and kind of watch what I was drawing at a distance. But that being said, mostly because I was rusty, the entire drawing process took roughly 3 hours, and I hope to be able to get that down to more like 1 to 1.5 hours once I shake the rust off. And this video footage is sped up roughly 15 times, and then every once in a while, small segments of the video I slow it down a little more, but still everything sped up at least 2 to 4 times, and the vast majority of this footage is 15 times the normal speed. So as you can see, once I have all the major structure inked in, the outlines of the form and the delineation of the anatomy. Obviously in the case of the Hulk, he's quite ripped, as they say, so there's almost every muscle is fairly strongly delineated, and then I would go in and start adding the hatching in spot blacks or very dark blacks in a few places that would be under the most extreme shadow conditions. And once again, the head is the last thing that I worry about after everything else is inked in. It's good to sort of work on less critical things first to sort of loosen up and find your groove, to make sure you're comfortable with the pen and what sort of hatching techniques that you've become comfortable with over the course of the drawing. So as you can see, the most important thing, the eyes, is one of the last things I do in the general inking. So that's sort of the first pass of inking, is to get everything up to a certain level, and then things slow down a little bit and you sort of sit back and you stare at the drawing and you just start filling in the small little sort of noodling around, improving the little tiny things that you see there. Maybe you know, you need to cast a slightly stronger shadow somewhere, or put a little more lighter hatching to make a more subtle gradation from light to dark. For example, in the shoulder, the deltoid muscles. And so as you can see, I'm now in that sort of noodling stage where I'm just sort of getting more and more nitpicky with fine things, and now I'm happy with the inking. And I just erased out the pencils after letting the ink dry for many minutes, and there was a lot of blank space up at the top of the page, so I decided I would just quickly use this transfer technique to just save myself some time and get the Hulk logo. And I didn't bother with the wording of The Incredible. I just put Hulk, and all I did was scribble some graphite onto the back of that paper, and I just printed out the Hulk logo from Google image search. And so I just traced it to transfer the graphite onto the paper to give me a nice quick guide, so that I could then very quickly get right to inking and have a sort of the official Hulk logo without taking the time to painstakingly copy it freehand. And I could also point out that this particular Hulk image, I actually, like I said, I haven't done comics in a while, and it's probably the first time in my life I ever drew the Hulk. So I just did an image search on the internet, and I actually found 3 or 4 images that I sort of merged together to come to this final image. Overall, the body is actually taken from a nice figure that I found of the Hulk. I just sort of spread the legs out a bit, not the legs, the arms out a bit more, and changed the anatomy and the veins a little bit. And then in that figure, that statue, the head was turned sideways, so I rotated the head using other reference images to face front. And then the main face reference that I found, I didn't like the hair. It was more old-fashioned, and sort of just all of the hair came from the middle top point of his head. So here you'll see, once I was done inking, I made a photocopy of the drawing. And so the reason I did that is I thought it would be kind of nice if I'm going to be selling this drawing or giving this to someone as a gift, then it would be kind of cool if I could give them or sell them both the inked line art and leave that intact, but also give them a hand-colored copy, so that and it could look really cool. Imagine in a single larger wide picture frame having both images side by side, the original inked line art drawing, and then side by side with a hand-colored copy of the inked drawing. So that's what I was going for. And as you can see, I'm just artist markers are transparent, so you start with the lightest colors first, and then you build on top. And you have to be a little bit careful. This is drawn on a standard 11 by 17 actual comic book artist Bristol board. So if you're not somewhat careful with your technique, you can end up with streaks being much more visible than you would want. So as you can see, I'm just filling in the colors as I go, and it may seem counterintuitive, but one of the tricks to get smooth coloring with an art marker is to sort of take your time and go in relatively small circular shapes, because you can sort of get close to maximum saturation with the pigment that is dispersed by the pen. And in that way, it's pretty impossible for streaks to show up fairly strongly, because that part of the paper already has the maximum saturation of that particular pigment. I hope I explained that clearly enough. So a lot of people, a lot of beginners think that they need to be really careful and just kind of color in big giant stripes to try to avoid overlapping, and that's a big mistake. You're going to overlap no matter what, or you're going to have white gaps, which is even worse. So the trick is just go nice and slow and circular pattern to fill a large area, and in that way you'll get close to maximum saturation in the paper as you go, which means it's pretty impossible for streaks to show up that badly. And as you can see, I started coloring the jeans and, or I guess pants. I don't know if technically if they're denim or not, but they're actually purple. And you'll see when I use blue pens to color, because the markers I had, the blue range I had offered a better range. But then I actually go over with a sort of light pink marker to tint the blue pants to make them the desired end result purple color. So that's another one of the nice benefits. So the sort of downside you have to watch out for with the art markers being transparent is that they can streak. But a nice thing is that because they're transparent, you can overlay colors to tint them to make new colors that aren't otherwise in your set of art markers. So there we go. There's the finished inked line art version. And then in a second you'll see the finished colored version in detail. And there we go. And I hope this was entertaining to watch, and stay tuned for more drawing videos. A lot of them will be more instructional. Thanks for watching. If you like these projects and videos, and you'd like to help them get finished and released faster and at an even higher quality, then please consider becoming a Patreon backer. I'll do my best to make the entire creation process as entertaining and educational as possible during the entire development process, with frequent live streams, videos, and progress updates. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, BitBeamCannon, to stay up to date on everything I'm working on, and help spread the word by liking and sharing. I really appreciate your support.